special work session that we've called today to discuss the COVID-19 updates. Today is May 26th, 2020. And at this point, I would like to turn it over to our superintendent, Ms. Jackie Bird, to give us those updates. Ms. Bird?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And happy Monday, Tuesday to everyone. And hope everyone enjoyed the weekend. It was beautiful, even though it was raining, but it was refreshing. Today, we're going to bring you some updates that we have. And the first update you're going to have to come before you will be coming from our acting Chief Academic Officer, Michelle Townley, to update you on summer. So I'm going to turn it over now to Michelle Townley, and then we're going to continue, and I will be bringing you a graduation update after Michelle Townley. Ms. Townley.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm hopeful that you can see our screen. All right, so we'll begin with our summer learning updates. For elementary, we have two different platforms where our students will be able to access some summer learning opportunities. The first is a paper-based resource from Scholastic Weekly. Each child will be receiving a Summer Express booklet as well as one family guide to literacy per family. These booklets focus on mathematics, reading, writing, phonics, and vocabulary lessons that are grounded through the use of science and social studies concepts. These booklets will serve as a bridge between grade levels. For example, if I am a rising third grader, then there is a strategic book that kind of does a little bit of a spiral review of some crucial second grade skills, as well as previewing some necessary third grade skills. And so those specific strategies and lessons that'll be most beneficial for our students, our curriculum team is going to provide some regularly scheduled video releases per grade level that we will blast out on social media and to our own different schools' web pages so that parents can view those quick little brief videos to kind of hit the highlights of the lessons for that week to hopefully help us mitigate some of that summer slide. In addition to the paper-based resources, we have been able to work with our school technology and curriculum teams to provide some digital resources through our kindergarten through fifth grade students all the way through July 17th. And so we have flyers that advertise those different resources in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. I'll show you a preview of that in the next slide. We've also been able to work with our partners at Achieve 3000, and they are going to provide Smarty Ants, which is a popular phonemic resource for students that are incoming kindergartners. So we've been able to share that with our preschool partners, and as well as parents are registering their kindergartners at schools, we're providing that flyer for them as well. Also, our students served by AmeriCorps will be receiving a backpack of books and summer reading activities. This will be in addition to all the other district provided resources. So we appreciate the Polk Education Foundation and our partners through AmeriCorps. And then our technology hotline will also remain open through June to help support families. So here is just an example of the flyer for our elementary electronic resources that's being handed out. The link is right there for families, as well as some just recommended use. Some of the programs are as easy as 15 minutes 3 times a week, 15 minutes twice a week. It's really not too labor intensive. And of course, these are just resources that we're able to provide to everyone to help support our students. Then in secondary, these plans really largely remain unchanged. It's what we do every summer to help our middle and high school students recover courses or credits that they might need to move forward. The difference is it will be offered through a distance learning platform as opposed to being housed in our brick and mortar buildings. So students are already registering. Actually, today is the deadline for that registration. So our high school and middle school counselors and administrators have been working diligently to get students in the correct courses, and they will begin their coursework on June 3rd and continue through the 30th. Devices and connectivity supports are also available to all of our students. And again, we will have that technology hotline for our secondary students as well. An additional piece that we actually just finalized and didn't quite make it to the PowerPoint point is that for all of our students that will begin Algebra 1 in the fall, our math team has worked to develop a on-ramp course for them so that they can access some prerequisite skills and refreshers from their pre-algebra all throughout the summer as well. And then just some additional special programs of support. Of course, we have our extended school year that's being provided in a distance learning format from June 3rd through June 30th. And all of those students are currently being registered and working through our center schools are serving as an enrollment hub to help expedite that process. We appreciate their expertise and familiarity with getting our students onboarded for ESY, so they're diligently working through those pieces. And then our migrant programs, our migrant intervention teachers will continue to work throughout the summer with our secondary students on credit recovery. And then at the elementary setting for our migrant students, in addition to the scholastic weekly resources as well as the electronic resources provided to all students, our migrant programs is working to provide some additional STEM activities from Camp Invention that will also just further support student learning throughout the summer. So that is a brief and quick overview of how we will be supporting our students all throughout the summer.
Thank you, Ms. Townley. One of the things I wanted to say is that it was very important that we looked at our K-5 and we want to make sure we lessen the summer slide as much as we can. So therefore, that's why we're keeping them on distance learning by providing some of the activities and some of the online curriculum that you see. There is no mandatory retention, but it is very important that we continue to work with our students to make sure that we, again, prevent as much of the summer slide that we can. When it comes to secondary, we want to give them a chance to really go ahead and if they can do the credit recovery. So I want to thank Ms. Townley for making sure that she pulled together something that we can help benefit our community, as well as making sure we take care of all of our K-5 students and our secondary students when they're looking at credits. So I wanted to make sure, because a lot of times people think there's still mandatory retention for third grade. There was not. So therefore, we're just offering this as a benefit for enrichment and remediation as well. Are there any questions that we have regarding summer? It's like I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, we have one question coming in.
Right. No, this is Billy. Hi. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear the very beginning of this, so I just wanted to ask about the K through 5. Is that what's the criteria for accessing it? Is anybody eligible for it, or is there a requirement that anybody use it? What's the guidance around that?
So for our kindergarten through 5th grade students, it is available to all of our students. So that's one of the big differences because we're in a distance learning format. We've been able to provide the scholastic weekly paper-based resources as well as the electronic resources to all of our students. So not just the typical 3rd graders that we normally see in summer camp. So it's taken some legwork behind the scenes, but the tech team has been really helpful with our curriculum team. So we made it happen.
So sounds like this is sort of what we would normally do for the 3rd graders that we're retaining, but instead we're offering the resources K through 5 to everyone as they want it. Like it's no one's. I'm assuming no one's required to access it, but it's available to everyone. Is that right?
Correct.
And are the principals or anyone sort of reaching out specifically to kids they think may benefit specifically? Have we had any ability to do that? I know that's probably a pretty big ask. I was just curious if we were trying to target things at all.
No, our principals have been working to make sure that all students get the materials in their hands. That's one of the things they're trying to accomplish this week as families are dropping off and picking up awards and things of that nature. They're trying to get as many of the paper-based resources in their hands in the same trip as they humanly possibly can. We have a couple of schools that are still waiting their delivery, so we're hopeful that they get those within the next day. But we'll be scheduling those throughout the summer as students come and pick up their lunches. We can easily give them the paper-based packets and booklets as well, and continue to share the electronic resources through the district webpage, social media. I know Rachel and her team are ready to do a release about summer learning after
Oh,
we
good,
did this presentation today.
good. That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Reynolds?
Good morning. I just wanted to ask about with distance learning and the virtual platforms, how are we communicating to the students that they can keep their computers throughout the summer if needed? I've seen some schools post on their Facebook page indicating, kindergarten through fourth grade can keep, fifth grade need to return, but not all schools. Is there anything we're doing countywide to make sure that's communicated to our families?
We've encouraged the schools to kind of share that information because each school has a different mechanism for how they, just the logistical setup at the school and how they do drop off, pick up of devices as well. I know as we've been registering secondary students, they've obviously been able to keep their devices so that they could keep working on their courses. And the same with elementary, as schools are sharing and they know which kids need a device. We've actually even checked out more devices to students throughout this time. So we're just working with schools to help support them with that process.
Thank you.
And Ms. Reynolds, to add to that, we had a meeting last week, I believe, with the principals, and we also shared with them, like if you have a rising sixth grader, they have to return that device and check out one from their other school so that they can have that one registered to them. So we are making sure that we keep those devices at the school site, as well as when they go on from fifth to sixth, they can check out a device there so that they can stay online and they can, we can communicate with them during the summer.
As far as getting when they're moving to their new school, they're communicating, I guess, with their school directly? Do they just call the school and say, hey, I want to come pick one up? Or how are our sixth grade and our ninth graders receiving information about how to get them from their new schools?
They are communicating with the schools, directly to the schools, because they would have to go in there and be enrolled in, and they recheck that back out. So they are communicating with the schools.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Courtney has a question.
Thank you, Superintendent Byrd. I two-part. Are we short any electronics, and can we be of service to replace the damaged ones or the kids that need another one, whatever the case may be? Where do we stand on that? And then second, will our summer school be staffed as normal with people helping? And it was Miss Townley. I missed the whole first part. I was locked out. Okay. Those are my two main questions on that, Superintendent Byrd. Thank you.
Okay, to answer the question, are we short? As you know, we readied every device that we had this year for our students. So we still have devices. And like Ms. Townley said, we're still checking out additional devices right now as we're getting ready to go into summer. And the second question was the damaged ones you asked about. Is there, if they're bringing them back in and they're damaged, I don't believe we've gotten a lot of damaged ones in. But if they need to take them back to the schools and then we're assessed from there. I can tell you, Ms. Courtney, one of the things that we did do, we had parents that were leaving the county. And so we're dealing with that, how to get those devices back. Thankfully, they're contacting us and letting us know they're leaving the county so they can return those devices to us as well.
And then my staff, are we staffing summer school with our teachers and instructors normally? That I'm sure we are, but I just wanted to verify. Yes, thank you. I see your head.
Yes,
Awesome.
we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on summer? Okay, so we're going to go, Ms. Townley, if you would share the screen for the graduation protocol, we're going to go into the graduation protocols. As you know, we'll start graduations on June the 6th. And just some of the things I want to go over with you, Ms. Dawson is not here. She's taking a little rest at this point. So before graduation start, looking at the entrance and different things of that nature, the entrance, they're going to have it separated out at the stadium, where the parents will enter behind home base and the students and the staff will enter at the third base. One of the things I did want to say, because we're in that season right now where we have rains, we have worked with the stadium to allow umbrellas to come in. I think you went one ahead of me a little bit, Ms. Townley. Oh, you're showing the entrance. Okay, I got it. Um, so that's the map. But we are allowing them to have the umbrellas where they can bring those in to the stadium because of the rain. So we did work that. One of the things I want to say is that the metal detectors, everyone is going to have to go through the metal detectors. So therefore, we're really asking parents to please not bring big, large bags. One, it will slow down the process of going through the detectors. As you all also know, anywhere you go and you have the big bags, it slows the process. We're going to have multiple staff there though for temperature checks. I want to thank our RNs and LPNs for they're going to be coming out to help us make this a successful event for our students and our community. They're going to come out and do temperature checks. If someone should register high, they have tents off to the side. They'll let them go and they'll wait 10 minutes, recheck their temperature, and once they're cleared, they'll allow them to go in at that time. They'll also be giving out wristbands. To those parents and everything once they're cleared to go in. Social distancing will be highly encouraged at the time. They're going to have signs and different things at the stadium encouraging social distancing. As you know, that's how they're going to have the seating. When it comes to the restrooms, because that was one of the biggest things, how do you social distance with so many people going in and out of a restroom? So what they're going to do, they're going to utilize some of the guardians and they'll be at the entrances, making sure we don't have, a lot of people in the restroom areas at the time so they can make sure they're social distancing. When it for parking, the parking is going to be all the guests will park in the main parking area. They're going to have signs out and you will see that. And then we'll have staff park in a different lot. Security is going to be there and the ushers from the Tiger Town. We have LPD. It's going to be there in security. We have some of the sheriff's office that will be there, as well as our own guardians providing security, not only just in the parking lot, but in the stadium and in the stands as well. The paramedics will be there. We have Polk County paramedics that will be on site, and they'll make sure that they're there if need be for our community. Concession stands will not be open. They will have waters that they'll be handing out, but they are not going to open the concession stands. The waters will be handed out to students. Let me rephrase that. If a parent want to bring in an unopened bottle of water, we are allowing them to bring that in, as well as hand sanitizer with them at the time. So we want to make sure that we went over those things as we come to the entrance so we can make it as smooth as possible and move through it as quickly as we can. Now, the next slide, I believe Michelle was showing the entrance. And it may be a little difficult to see, but the map has that. And I'll send this, the PowerPoint to each and every one of you, and a bigger map so that you can see the entrance area in the parking lot where they're coming in. So when we send that, you can see how they're having the community come in through one side and the students come in through another side. They're going to actually exit out at different sides as well so that we can make sure we get the flow and they're not all gathered up and commingling in one area. We keep them flowing. They will have color-coded check-in times for all participants. So what's going to happen is they'll have those students that have color-coded check-in times. And when they come to the stadium, they'll have their code. And the schools are handling this very well. It was actually a great idea to have the students come in and stage them where everyone is not all showing up at one time and we can move them through and not having an inconvenience at the gate. As you notice, the graduation times did change. We were hoping that we'll be 8 in the morning, but once baseball reopened, the baseball field will be now open for the practice for the baseball team. And they usually practice between 8:30 and 9. They start their practicing. So that will be difficult for us to graduate at 8 and be out of their way before they want to practice. Therefore, they've allotted us to have times of 4, 6, or 8 p.m. There will be some days that we will have the small school settings. You'll see that when we send out the calendar, where it will be a 4, 6, and an 8. Other days we have large schools, we may just have a 4 o'clock only. Again, the same thing that we discussed earlier, where there's not going to be anyone sitting in the same sections will be there. So we'll have that. Dr. Joy Johnson and I, we actually did a video. And we're going to show you that video if they have it queued up, talking about the safety that we're going to have at the graduation stadium. So make sure our community and our students feel safe about coming to graduation. Hello, class of 2020. In just a few days, you will make history when you graduate at Publix Field at Joker Martin Stadium. Your family will see you cross home plate to receive your diploma. They'll snap pictures of you on the Jumbotron. They'll cheer and clap from the stands, and I know their hearts will be so full of pride for you and your accomplishments. Graduation is an important milestone and a source of lifelong memories. That's why we're so excited that thanks to our partners at the Florida Department of Health, City of Lakeland, and Detroit Tigers, we have found a way to make an in-person ceremony possible for you, while also protecting the health of you and your families. As graduation approaches, we want to make sure you are aware of the extensive safety protocols we're putting into place for your big day. First and foremost, no one should participate in or attend a graduation ceremony if they're experiencing any of the following symptoms: fever, cough, shortness of breath, sore throat, diarrhea. If you are experiencing these symptoms, please stay home. Graduation is not mandatory. Graduates are not required to attend, and neither are their guests. For those who do attend, we are taking every possible precaution to protect their health and safety. Let's hear more about that from Dr. Joy Jackson, Director of the Florida Department of Health in Polk County.
Thank you, Superintendent Byrd. The Florida Department of Health is proud to partner with Polk County Public Schools, the Detroit Tigers, and the City of Lakeland to make these unique graduation ceremonies possible for the class of 2020. The safety protocols we've developed for these events are based on guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Here's a look at what you'll notice at the ceremonies. Each graduate is receiving 4 tickets to graduation. By limiting the number of attendees, we will be able to separate families by at least 6 feet to abide by social distancing safety precautions. When you receive your ticket, you will see it has been printed with a seat number. Please sit in your assigned seat so we can maintain social distancing throughout the stadium. Graduates and guests will also be given a colored piece of paper that will denote a check-in time. That piece of paper will be stapled to your ticket. Please do not proceed to the gate until your check-in time. You may wait in your cars. This is being done to avoid crowds at the gate. We're also requiring that graduates be spaced 6 feet apart on the field. Fever is one of the most common symptoms of COVID-19. Everyone entering the stadium will be required to have their temperature checked by nurses using touchless thermometers. If you register a temperature higher than 100.4 degrees, you will be asked to step aside. Your temperature will be taken again a few minutes later with a different device. If you still have a higher than normal temperature, you will not be permitted to enter the stadium. The same procedures will be used for both graduates and attendees. Everyone will be required to wear a mask. Graduates will be provided masks and will be required to wear them at all times, except for when having their pictures taken. Guests must provide and wear their own masks at all times to attend the ceremony. The stadium, including seats, will be disinfected daily using proper EPA-approved disinfectants for COVID-19. If 2 ceremonies take place on the same day, stadium employees will use separate seating areas for each event. Attendees of the second ceremony will not sit in seats used by attendees of the first ceremony. Normally, graduates shake the hands of their teachers and principals as they cross the stage. Unfortunately, this won't happen this year. No handshakes will be permitted in order to help reduce the transmission of COVID-19. Stadium staff members will limit the number of people in bathrooms, and concession stands will not be open during the ceremonies. Ceremonies will be conducted as quickly as possible, speeches are being limited, and graduates will be in near constant motion on the field. Congregating after the ceremony will not be permitted so that graduates and attendees can get in and out as quickly as possible. Please be mindful to practice proper safety measures against COVID-19 while attending the ceremony. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Cover your coughs and sneezes with your elbow or a tissue. Be sure to properly dispose of the tissue and immediately wash or sanitize your hands. The decision to conduct in-person graduation ceremonies was not made lightly. The Florida Department of Health in Polk County, the school district, Detroit Tigers, and the city of Lakeland have worked closely throughout the entire planning process. Every detail has been carefully considered, and in every decision we put your health and safety first. We are confident we can give the graduates a ceremony they'll never forget, while also protecting everyone in attendance on graduation day.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson, and thank you to everyone at the Florida Department of Health for working with us to make graduation day possible for the class of 2020. You just heard about the extensive safety measures we're taking for our upcoming graduations. At every step, we're taking precautions that will reduce the risk to you and your family. However, this is a new disease, and there is still much we do not know about it. If you do not feel safe attending graduation, please don't attend. Those who choose not to attend in person can watch the ceremonies via live stream at youtube.com/Polk County Public Schools. For more information about our upcoming graduation ceremonies, please visit our website at polkschoolsfl.com/graduation. Class of 2020, your graduation ceremony will be unlike any other in the country. We're so excited to share this moment with you. Stay safe, and we'll see you at the stadium soon. Thank you. And that was one of the videos that's going to be out for our community and our families so that they understand the precautions that we're taking to make sure that everyone is safe. Are there any questions regarding graduation? Ms. Miller.
I apologize. I'm getting things kind of delayed. Question. I had one about ESY that I'll email because I didn't have a hand raised sign in time, I suppose. But about graduations, some of our high schools have city officials that usually participate. I know I have one that has very active participation during graduation. Is there a role? Have we sent instructions? Are we asking them maybe this year they don't attend? What is the input from staff and the people planning on the city dignitaries and other elected officials that usually are invited to ceremonies during this special ceremony?
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Because we do have all the dignitaries that we usually invite out, because of the spacing, there's not going to be a stage for them this year to, like we normally have everybody on the stage. If they are interested in getting tickets, they need to contact the school or contact Tammy Dawson's office is what we're doing, and they will give them tickets in a stand. But the only people that's going to be really down on the field with the students is mainly going to be the principal, assistant principals, probably myself, John Hill, and any board member for that school. We're trying to limit that because we're moving these graduations as quickly as we can. And that's been a communication that they're putting out. Hopefully that answers. I know you're kind of a little gurgly there, and if you want to send it to us in the email, we can.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Courtney? Ms. Courtney, are you there? I believe we have a question from you. Okay, she comes back. We'll circle back around. Let's go to Ms. Reynolds.
Hello, I know Winter Haven High School put out a video last week for their students, and it talked a lot about not wearing heels because the Tigers do not want their field aerated this week. How are we communicating that to all students? Because the last thing we want is for a kid not to be able to graduate because they wore high heels.
So one thing, a great question. One thing I'll tell you is that the PR team did put a video together for the schools, and they were showing those at their school sites. They were putting that video together. We really highly encourage, and we have since day one, for them to come in flats, not only because of walking on the field, but the area that they're going to be in, it is not going to be conducive for heels at all. I was out there, and trust me, I wore flats for that. So I really encourage them to wear flats on that day. Ms. Fields?
First of all, Superintendent Byrd, I want to thank you and the City of Lakeland and the Detroit Tigers and Department of Health for being very transparent on what you have come to the community with, which is something I'm sure took a lot of time and effort. So I want to commend you guys for that. I wanted to find out, how will we ensure that every graduating senior will get the specific directions on expectations along with the parents? I know we have the videos, but are we doing anything beyond that?
So great question, Ms. Fields. I can tell you that we met with via Zoom the senior class presidents of the classes, and they were communicating back as well with their classmates. But we've also been giving the information to the principals, and they're actually pushing that out because they can get to their communities and their families faster than we can and better. But we are actually encouraging them to also keep up with our web pages. We're putting a lot of stuff up there as well. But the principals have really taken it. We met last week, I want to say, with the assistant principals back out on the field and other staff members so that they can get that information out to the families. And so we have their whole administrative team now that's communicating it out. And if there's anyone that is not sure, I would say make sure they contact their school. A lot of principals are putting stuff up on their website. They're communicating directly with their students as well. Mr. Townsend.
Thanks. Just a couple of things. First, that's a helpful video. Thank you for that. I think that will be useful. Just are any other districts doing this? And I mean, or something similar to this? I've seen various reports, but it's a little confusing. Or is anyone else doing anything kind of like this scale that we know of?
To be honest with you, not of this scale. I've heard a lot of my colleagues were pushing theirs off to like July and August. I don't know if they were doing it thinking they can get back into a venue that was more enclosed, which even when I spoke to RP funding, they told me even right now, September is out for them. Right. I can tell you that I don't think they are. I know Daytona had the Speedway where they had their high schools. They went around the Speedway. I believe I want to say Las Vegas, they had something of that nature, but to come onto a stadium like this, they have not. I have not seen it. Let me be clear about that. I have not seen that, but I think it's something that our students did not want to do a drive-through. We've seen the drive-throughs. Our students did not want to do virtual. So to really try to accommodate them is not the perfect model. It is not, but it at least gives them that final walk that they can have and say goodbye to their friends. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I think that's, what I would say to the public about that is we're going to be having what amounts to probably the first significant mass gathering in the state of Florida since COVID happened. Really, I mean, there's a lot at stake in proving that we can behave and look out for each other. And I think this is it's a calculated risk, but there's certainly some reward to it as well, as if we're able to find a way forward together. And to that end, I've always thought it was a risk worth supporting. What I'm most concerned about really isn't what happens on the field. It's the clumping in the parking lot before and after. I'm curious if we have, I know we've got the color coded things. We've got the LPNs doing temperatures and all of that. Are we going to have spaces marked off so people aren't queuing up like they're at a Disney ride or whatever? And are we going to have people sort of enforcing that? Because I think both of those things are probably necessary.
Well, that's a good question, but I can tell you that's why when we started this, the actual the Major League Baseball sent their security person out that looks at how the security works and how things funnel in and funnel out. And LPD has actually committed to making sure that that does not happen. They're bringing on extra officers and everything that they can keep that moving. So I can tell you that's why they wanted to have two different entrances and exits from the parents to the kids, because we know that they get together, they will stay together. So we can keep flowing them out, and then they will be the ones, just like they would do at a game. They keep pushing that traffic out of the lot, so they are not actually just clumping together or celebrating together right there in the parking lot. So they have discussed that, and I know LPD has a plan, and we're bringing in some of our additional SROs to come and assist as well.
And I think to some extent, emphasizing to people that they should have their masks on when they get out of the car, you know, as opposed to waiting to get into the stadium. You know, like I think potentially genuinely the most risk in this is actually entering stadium. And you know, I don't know that we quite emphasized that on the video, but that's just a thing to think about. You know, other than that, you know, I think it's a calculated risk worth taking. I appreciate the care that's gone into it, but we should all understand that there will be a lot of eyes on us. You know, there was a swimming pool party in Arkansas, I read, with a bunch of high school kids got together and actually caused an outbreak in Arkansas. I mean, these things can happen, and it's going to be really important that we are respectful of each other and manage this the right way.
Okay, thank you. I see Ms. Courtney is back. Ms. Courtney?
I am so sorry, my internet, I do pay my bill. That's one of the ones I can do. First, I want to say that I felt like when this rolled out, you and the district staff and everybody, it was danged if we do and danged if we don't. That's kind of what I got from people, and which kind of leads me to my next question, which, by the way, I think this is awesome. But do we have a percentage of each high school and how many kids have chosen not to participate? And will that help us in planning? And then referring to Mr. Townsend's concern, I think the best teacher in this case is definitely us to model that. It's good teaching no matter what. Modeling, you know, even out in public. You know, I went to SNL today and got a hamburger, and I was probably, besides the staff, the only one wearing a mask. And, you know, people look and watch and listen, and I think modeling would be our best bet out in public, ourselves, etc. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do know you know, it's to get a good handle on a percentage, because you'll hear students say they're coming, students say they're not coming. But I can tell you that the principals are talking and they're looking and taking account for their students that are going to attend. I do have some numbers. I was trying to pull it up in between, trying to flip back over to unmute my mic here. So if I have the percentage, I will send it to you. But we do have some numbers. But again, it's just who will actually show up on that day. But we're planning for them all to show up. So we're going to call every student's name, so their name is called, and we're planning for them to show up.
Awesome. I was hoping that was our, I knew it would be. Never mind, not hoping. I knew it would be. I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you so much, Superintendent Byrd.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds?
I think you just answered my question, but we will be calling every senior's name, not just the ones who say they're coming.
That's correct. Okay. We're calling names.
Okay, and I just wanted to highlight, for years, Polk County's been criticized for not being proactive and following the trends rather than leading the way. And I think this is a great example of how your leadership has allowed us to be innovative and forge a path for hopefully others to be able to follow, for their students to be able to be celebrated properly. So thank you. I also wanted to highlight, because you said it really, really quickly earlier, but that you had a Zoom call with all of our senior class presidents and allowed them to be the voices of what the district is doing for graduations, which I think is huge, and allows us to really be student focused when we allow them to have a stake in the game. So thank you for that as well.
You're welcome. And actually, they're going to receive their mask, and they got to vote on the logo that they wanted on their mask from the Detroit Tigers. So they got to pick that. So when you said it was their selection. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you. I just wanted to say and echo some of my colleagues' comments. I'm so thankful to the staff and Superintendent Byrd for your leadership in moving forward with graduations. It's just been an incredible, crazy time for these students and teachers. And yes, we've heard some that have done drive-bys, some that have done the Zoom, some who are postponing until a year from now. Actually, I've seen that in the Northeast. So the fact that we're able to proceed in a timely fashion before our military kids move on to their next phase and our seniors move on to their next opportunity, to be able to take it, it's not ideal. We all get that. You know, it's difficult. 4 tickets are difficult. But you do the best that you can. And I think in light of the times that we're in and the fact that these kids need something to be recognized, the time and effort that you and staff have put into this ceremony is amazing. It seems like each week we continue to tweak it and make it the best it can be. And I'm very gracious for the Detroit Tigers, the city of Lakeland, just Publix, everybody working together to make sure that we're able to move forward with graduations. And I have seen a lot of information coming from our principals all across our county regarding some of the items that were mentioned, the flat shoes, I forget who asked about that. We've received that repeatedly. You know, girls don't need to be in heels. That makes no sense. And as far as the number of tickets and wearing the mask and we're not congregating, I really think the senior class, for the most part, the ones that I have spoken with, realize that there has to be restrictions and that this is, quite frankly, an opportunity for them unlike any other. And we want to take it seriously. We want to be responsible. We want to be respectful, but we want to have that moment to be able to walk across the field in front of family and actually graduate. So thank you so much for that. And for the team, I know I mentioned them all last time at our last school board meeting and work session, so I won't belabor it, but it means a lot to the graduating seniors in the class of 2020. So I just want to say thank you so much. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but they are going to get the chance that they deserve. They've worked 12 years to be able to walk. And while they're not walking across the stage, they're walking across home plate in front of their peers, if you will, and their family and our district admin. And we're really excited for each of them and for the time and effort you all have put into this going forward. So I can't say it enough. Thank you so very much for all you all have done. We really, really appreciate it. That concludes my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions related to graduations? Okay, we're going to move to our next topic, which will be federal funding. And I believe, do we have Ms. Dodge? Is Ms. Dodge presenting? I hope I don't know if Ms. Dodge or Mr. Perron. Federal funding. Ms. Townley, you want to pull that slide up for us?
I don't know.
Okay, good afternoon. This slide is going to go over the CARES Act funding. As part of the CARES Act, Funding was provided for schools through the Education Stabilization Fund. 13 billion was the K-12 allotment. And it was distributed to states and will be distributed to districts based on your Title I allocation. 90% of the allocation is going to be passed through school districts based on that share. And Polk County Schools' estimated share of the allotment is about $34 million. This funding under the legislation is allowable. You can use it for anything that you're allowed to do under ESEA, which is Title I, IDA, Perkins, CTE, or McKinney-Vento. It can be used for preparedness and response to the pandemic, the needs of individual schools, sanitation, planning for summer and the upcoming fall school year. It can be used for technology, hardware, software, or connectivity, mental health services, summer and after school activities, including online, and anything that keeps schools open and continues services for students. And then it can also finally can be used for keeping existing staff employed. 10% of the funding is going to go to the governor, and he's allowed to use that anything he would like to do to keep districts that were hit hardest by the pandemic going. Florida's share of the governor's emergency relief fund is about $174 million. And as of Friday, the state still had not applied for our education stabilization funds, and the deadline for the application from the state is June 1st. Do you want me to stop for questions, or do you want me to keep going?
Yes, can we, let's break right there, Ms. Dodge. So they got questions regarding the CARES Act. Ms. Reynolds?
Who is responsible from the state for applying for funds? Is it DOE?
Yes.
And have they given any indication as to why they haven't applied, or is there someone specifically that we should be reaching out to encourage them to get that in sooner rather than later? Because June 1st is in 6 days.
It's coming up. We're unclear as to why they haven't applied yet. My understanding is that there's been discussions at the state level over what should be included in their application and whether they should withhold administrative funds from districts and those types of things. So, we have repeatedly asked and repeatedly not gotten a response as to why we haven't applied yet. But we do know that the deadline is June 1st, so they're going to have to at least apply by then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Courtney?
Ms. Dodge, I've talked to numerous community leaders in Mulberry about the Boys and Girls Club. Apparently they used a local elementary school in the month of June, and that has been pulled off the shelf. Would something like this help the Boys and Girls Club to allow them to use our facilities?
I'm looking at Angela. I believe that the use of facilities is around sanitation.
Agreement, but at Mulberry we gave them a property.
I'm sorry, I couldn't really hear you.
We gave them a property for Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, so what Angela is telling me is that last year we gave the Boys and Girls Club a different property to use for their summer activities, and then that is happening again this year. So it's not necessarily the school, but they do have a place that we are providing for them.
All right, thank you, whoever answered that. I think it might have been Ms. But I appreciate that, because that was a big concern. And what happens? We just don't get the money if the state doesn't apply for it? That's the bottom line?
I would assume so. I can't imagine that we're in a position not to ask for the money, but I would assume that we wouldn't get it. There's no mechanism in the law for us to be automatically distributed the money.
Wow. So it is a possibility. So we need to urge everybody to contact the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Courtney. Mr. Townsend?
Can you go back to the slide before that, please? Real quick. I'm sorry, slide before that as well. Back to the Title I money. So the final bullet, continuing to employ existing staff of the local educational agency. Now, is that, are there restrictions on that, or is that specific to staff who are funded by federal money? Like, you know, there are a lot of programs that are paid for out of whole cloth, I think, by Title I or by federal money. Is that just open money that we could use for anything? I mean, for any
It's
employee?
one of the, I'm sorry. It's one of the allowable uses of the money. So any of your federal program allowable uses are covered under the first bullet, which is ESEA, IDEA, Perkins. Those would cover your employees that you have that are funded by those programs. And so the last bullet would be anything outside of those federal programs if you need, if you know, would be allowable to use that money for.
So you could plug a budget hole for a school if there's a hole, and I mean if the money's there, you could use it to keep a teacher employed who isn't, who wasn't going to be otherwise because of the state.
That's correct.
Okay.
Ms. Dodge,
However, I would just as a reminder, we are fully funded through June 30th. So the only time that it would be necessary to plug a hole for an employee would be after July 1st.
Right. No, I'm
Okay.
this is all looking ahead. So additionally, gosh, I forgot what I was going to ask. Okay, that's helpful for now. Thanks.
okay. Ms. Dodge, going back to Mr. Townsend's question about plugging for a staff member, I just want to make sure we understand these have to be reoccurring funds. If they're not, you're putting a position in place where there's no reoccurring dollars. Am I correct, Ms. Dodge?
That is correct.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Miller?
I'm sorry, could you clarify what that would mean practically? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I followed that.
So if these are one-time funding dollars, they're non-recurring.
Right.
And so I think what the point is that if we do choose in the future to use them to employ staff, it would be a one-time, we wouldn't have recurring funds.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not ongoing sustenance of the service as a whole, right?
Correct.
I know what I was going to ask. So do we have, we have a normal Title I federal budget, and the federal government's weird with how they send money out, but like, are we expecting to get the same amount of that? And then this is on top of that. This is supplemental to that. What are we thinking about? I mean, is this going to sort of replace what the federal government was normally going to give, or is this on top of it as far as we know?
So Title I applications were due at the beginning of May. Our estimate is that our allocation will be very similar to what it's been in the past.
Okay.
And this would be additional non-recurring, as we pointed out, funding.
Okay.
But the uses are tied to, at least in the first bullet, one of the things anything you can use Title I for, you would be able to use these funds for, and the same with other federal programs.
So at this point, there's no reason for us to think we have to do anything different to our federally funded programs yet. That's I mean, between having a normally and essentially normally funded federal share plus this additional money, the federal part is fairly well covered. Is that, I mean, is that
as far as we know?
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not going to hold you to developments that nobody can control, but okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just for the benefit of the public though, I mean, remind them that our federal share is what, 20%? It's fairly small, 15 to 20%, I think.
Of our budget.
Yeah.
Of our budget.
Mr. Perron will have, he can
It's
have
about
that.
40 million according to
okay.
Mr. Perron.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Yes, thank you. I had two questions. One, these dollars can be used for multiple areas. Are we going to get a breakdown of what they're used for? And, I'm curious on how we're going to determine what areas will need the most influx from these dollars. The other question is, our charter schools that we are LEA for, how will we distribute this money to them? Is it based on the Title I needs they have?
I would, in terms of the charter schools, yes, they would get their distribution based on their number of Title I. 15%, according to, based on their FTE. And then
I'm sorry, 15% of what?
Charter schools are 15% of our FTE, so they get 15% of the 34 million.
Okay, so charter schools are approximately 15% of our student population. And so we are expecting to distribute 15% of that money to charter schools. The caveat being that while Lake Wales is considered their own LEA for state purposes, when we looked at the estimated distribution for our district using the tool that was provided, they were not listed on the federal site as being their own LEA. So we're assuming that they will not have a separate share as their own LEA, and that their portion will come out of the 34 million that's going to the entire district.
Is the 15% of our student population counting Lake Wales?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not addition to.
Correct.
Okay. And it'll be based on their Title I numbers.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Reynolds?
Yes, I just wanted to highlight, so what it can be used for is a lot of times when we get grants, you can't spend the money until you've received it. Will we be able to retroactively go back and replenish some? So when we bought all of the routers for buses and things like that, will this money be able to be used on expenses we've already incurred?
We don't know for sure, but we are, Mr. Perrin says no. So I'm certainly not going to override his answer.
Okay, so we're looking at the things for fall really is the best we can guess, that we won't have the money until fall, so we won't be able to spend it on anything until the 2020-21 school year.
To the best of our knowledge, now summer and extended school year activities were included in the allowable uses. So I think that when it was passed back in March, that there was a thought that maybe districts might want to use it for extending the school year for summer learning. But I think based on when we're applying for the money, it might not be available for us to use for summer activities by the time we get it.
Do we know if any other states that have already applied have already received their funding and how quickly the turnaround is?
I don't know, but I will certainly reach out to the other districts and see if anyone else has heard. The large 7 districts have been meeting online weekly to discuss these issues and share information. We have our next meeting on Friday, and I will bring that up and ask if anyone has heard what other district or what other states have received.
Okay, I just would be interested to see if the application is submitted on May 25th, does that mean we're going to have the money next week, or does that mean we're going to see it in August? Does just kind of what the turnaround is. So that would be great information to get. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fields?
Superintendent Byrd, my understanding is that these CARES Act monies are, they want them to be spent pretty quickly if given. So do we have a team already in place that's thinking about how the dollars can be used? And then the timeline, does anyone have any sense of that? Because again, my understanding is that this is almost like an urgency type thing, trying to get the dollars into the hands of the people that really need it the most.
Thank you, Mrs. Great question. We have been talking about what can we use these additional dollars for once we get them. We've been talking, looking at technology for our students, looking at different things to make sure we can reach out in case we have to go back into a mode such as what we're in, that we can accommodate our schools as well as our community. So we have been looking at that. Is it anything you can do with funding when you're talking about feeding? So just throwing out some ideas. We have been talking about that, what we can utilize these dollars for once we get it. We have spent money already looking at the devices that we put out. And Mr. Perron probably can give you a quick update when he comes up next, what we spent so far, but each day that number is going up because we find out things that we have to add as we continue moving forward while we're in the pandemic. So, and we're preparing still for the next year. So we have been having those conversations, but more importantly, what can we benefit the kids, the schools, and the staff with these dollars if we can do that? That's been our focus. Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, just to clarify for the benefit of the public too. So we don't have to apply for the 34 million. That's our it's the extra 3 or 4 million that the state would get on our behalf and send to us, that the state has to apply to, right? So the bulk of this we are going to have, even if the state doesn't apply. Correct?
No, the state has to apply for us to receive the 34 million.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And that would be our share once the state does apply.
Oh, okay.
And then
Wow,
any additional
that's
funding
interesting.
would come through the governor's 174 million.
All right. Okay. Has the state, I suspect I know the answer to this question. Has the state provided any guidance on what they would like the local districts to use the money for? Like they'll say, hey, we're going to work on providing this. Why don't you use your federal money to do this? Has there been any kind of discussion along those lines?
Not to my knowledge, not on any of the calls that I have been on.
And none of my calls either.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that would be a reasonable way to behave if you were going to be the stewards of that money. Anyway, that seems sort of dovetails to what I think you're about to talk about, which is the FRS money. But anyway, I'll just be quiet about that for now.
Well, Ms. Miller and then Mr. Townsend, that's why we're going ahead trying to put together a plan, what we can utilize for. So when it comes, we're ready to move forward. So just brainstorming.
And let me just say, I guess, as one board member, in the absence of any collaboration from the state on this, for non-recurring money, I mean, it seems like probably the first bullet and the second bullet might be the most logical uses, just because we're going to have, if we're going to open schools at all, in the fall, and I suspect we probably will in some way, we're going to need a lot of sanitation supply and that's a kind of non-recurring expense that would probably be a very good investment. So, I'm not, it's just one board member's thoughts for that.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Can I request that once, because I'm assuming this is going to happen and this money will come, can I request that Mr. Perron give us a walkthrough or a breakdown of how these dollars will be spent as we receive them? Because what it can be used for is so vast, and we've mentioned the need for possible sanitation or new expenses, along with things that we may have saved money on. And I don't know, I'm going to ask Mr. Perron when he comes up on some of these contracted services through these other programs. But I would like to see a breakdown of these dollars and where they went, not only for good transparency, but just to understand and help explain to the public where we saw the highest need. Thank you.
Thank you. That's well taken. Wendy has that one. Ms. Cunningham?
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. I wanted to also say that let's hope that the state applies in time, obviously for June 1st. I would believe that that's the prudent thing to do, and I'm going to assume that they're going to do that, but I would share everybody else's concern and ask folks to contact our legislators to be able to express how we feel about and how important it is for this money. Secondly, if that moves forward, I would have to say that I think it would be prudent. Our next work session is going to be on June the 16th, that perhaps we could maybe ask superintendent or staff to maybe put together a little bit of an outline of what you're thinking as far as the expense and where these dollars might be spent and what you're thinking of, whether they are going to be used to supplement stuff that we've already done, as some have indicated, or perhaps used, for example, technology or purchasing hardware or software that is needed to move forward. I'm just not sure what staff is thinking about, so I think it would be great if you could put together an outline for us. I think that's what I'm hearing, and I feel the same way, just to have some idea, because these are dollars that we want to spend, and we want to spend them appropriately. So, Madam Superintendent, do you think we could, and I know things change, I get that, every day things are moving, but at least if we had a general outline of what staff plan to do with the monies, and again, it all depends on when they come, I understand that, but if they do come to us, how we think we might be able to spend it most appropriately.
Thank you. That point is well taken, and we can do that. Like I said, we've been brainstorming and dealing with technology and PPE equipment for schools. We will have something, and it'll be a rough draft because we never know what's going to come in and how we need to switch, but we can do that.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds?
Oops, sorry, I think Lori said kind of what I was going to say, but if we're thinking it's going to be 2021, it seemed earlier that it was indicated that that would be part of that budget. Is that what are we thinking that we'll have this information before then, or that it will be presented to us with the 2020-2021 budget?
Mr. Perone indicated it'd be part of the 2021 budget presentation. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Dodge, you can move to your next slide, which is
So during the last legislative session, HB 5007 passed, and that was the bill that amended the FRS rates that public employers pay into the system. I can tell you that that is probably the bill that I spent the most time working on throughout session, had the most meetings with top level people, trying to ensure that A, understand what the rates were based on, and B, try to make sure that districts had the funding to pay for them. The rate changes were based on two things: an actuarial study that was recommended by changes to GADSB, which are the accounting standards that basically said high risk, like firemen and other employees, emergency employees, were not living as long as expected in actuarial tables, and teachers were living longer. And so they adjusted the rates. 80% of the adjustment, or excuse me, 20% of the adjustment was based on the change in GADSB standards. The other 80% of the rate change was based on the state making a decision to reduce their assumed rate of return on investments. And I think it went from, I'm guessing here, it went from like 6.5% to 6.25% or 6.4%. It was a very small but calculated change in the rate of return. And that was where most of the change in the FRS rates came from. The state was expecting to bring in less money on their investments, and so they raised the rates to cover, to bring in more money from the payors to cover that change in investment return. In their staff analysis of the bill, total costs statewide for the changes in the rates were $404.6 million, and the school district's statewide share of that was $232.7 million. Our estimated costs based on our current employee base is $9 million. That bill has not been sent to the governor yet. It passed back in, I want to say, the end of February, but has not been forwarded to the governor for signature yet. And then the last issue was there's no opportunity, should it be signed by the governor into law, there's no opportunity for us to not pay that because our funding comes from the state and they just withhold what we owe them. We don't write a check to them to give them to pay the bill. They just withhold it. So the big 7 districts have been meeting on this issue for the past couple of weeks. A letter has been developed asking for a veto of the bill. It's being circulated this week to have each of the superintendents sign it, and should go to the governor's office by the end of the week. But that is now the last thing. The state went ahead, the legislature went ahead and passed the bill over everybody, including the colleges and universities. They all have a big share of this, not as big as school districts, because they thought that because school districts received Best and Brightest money last year, and that money is still in the FEFP. However, this upcoming 2021 school year, we do not have that expense of paying out those Best and Brightest bonuses. The state's position was that school districts would have the funding to pay the bill because of that reduced expense that they passed on to us. So during the current school year, we received about $9.9 million in Best and Brightest funding. Next year, we'll still get that $9.9 million, but we won't have to pay out the Best and Brightest funding. And so the state's position was that we would have the funding to pay that bill. That was pre-pandemic, pre anything that has happened since then. And I think that a lot of things has changed, including the economy, that may impact whether this bill gets signed or not.
First question coming from Ms. Courtney. Let's go to Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Superintendent Byrd. Ms. Dodge, I'm just curious, was there any reason provided as to why the state felt like the return on their investments would be lower? Did they offer an explanation?
I think during those meetings, those happened during I'm trying to remember the name of the group, but it's like the governor's economic people and the legislature's economic people. When they all provide those estimates over the past couple years, there has been a push to reduce that assumed rate of return. And this is the year that they did it, because I want to say it was based on an actuarial study that they do every 5 years. So it had been planned and pushed for by the state's economists for the past couple of years, based on historical rates of return, and the fact that nobody thought that the economy could keep going at the pace that it had been. But as I said, that was all based on information that they had in January, and now none of that information is valid anymore either.
Well, so they made those decisions before COVID-19 then? Correct. But that's an exceptionally conservative rate of return already. It's stunning to me. The investments must be ultra conservative investments. Mm-hmm. So anyway, just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend?
Quick dumb question. Are we among the big 7 districts? Are we one of them?
Yes, we're number 7.
Okay. So
Really
Superintendent, you're signing that letter on the behalf of the district. Superintendent
Yes,
is?
Wendy we've been talking for the last several weeks, and she's helping craft that on our behalf. And as soon as she gets that back, we will be signing that with the other 6 districts.
Okay, that's good. I think, it sort of plays into, what I'd asked about. I wrote my own resolution for this for the board, for the elected political board, because we are a political body, and wanted to demand a veto or a rescinding. It's my understanding we can't talk about that for a vote because we're not allowing public comment in this meeting. But I think one of the things that was just said about the federal money and about the state not applying for it, several board members said we need to get the public to go call our, well, if we're not willing to go on the record as a board, why would the public do it? You know, like, when are we going to go on the record as a board? And I want to be clear, this has nothing to do with superintendent. Superintendent's doing what she's supposed to do, which is sign that letter. I really appreciate that. For us as an elected board, how are we going to ask the public to advocate for us if we won't even do it for ourselves? That's why I wanted us to talk about this and to be able to vote on it today. Apparently it's illegal for us to vote on it today. I'm not going to fight over that, but maybe we prepare something for the next meeting to put on the agenda for the board. You know, if it's just the board expressing solidarity with the big district letters, that's fine. I guess it'll probably be too late for us to say anything officially about the application date, right? Like June 1st, we've missed that. Like, we won't be able to make an official statement. Okay. Again, I think these types of issues are the reason that I wanted additional meetings, so that this has been a really good update today. I appreciate it. I think if we had been having these in an ongoing way, we could have positioned politically in a way that would have been helpful and that would have given the public something to advocate off of. I mean, for the record, I do urge the public to advocate because it's your system. It's your money being withheld. You know, one of the clear questions I guess I have to be clear, the state could choose to just cover this itself, right? I mean, there's an actuarial economic issue on one hand that sets the amount. Who pays for the amount is entirely political in the budget process, right? I mean, they could decide to cover it, right?
They could come up with $404.6 million.
Yeah, I mean, they just gave $500 million in tax breaks to out-of-state companies that a lot of people asked them to rescind. You know, it's clear the choices that they're making, and they're not to benefit the people and the kids and the employees of Polk County or any other local district. And I think as a board, it would be nice if we were able to say that as a group. So I guess that's really my take on that and the June 1st issue. I do appreciate Superintendent joining the big district letter. I think that's helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Dodger's been doing a great job staying in contact with the other large districts, that we join forces as a unit and not just in a single form. So I want to thank Ms. Dodge for working with those other liaisons in those districts to make sure we come together as one unit.
But again, the greatest amplifier of that is the public. I mean, if we can engage the public through those discussions, it builds the pressure. I mean, politics and power is a matter of pressure most time, and we don't take our full. Again, this is more a message to the board and maybe to Mrs. Dodge as well, to Ms. Dodge as well. The pressure from the public matters a lot, and we can't wait until the very end. We have to set the predicate for them. And so anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Thanks.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you. I had two things. One, that just reminded me of the page that was created on our website to inform the public. I would like to see this information put there so they can understand. So we as 7 board members can send them to one location to understand what this means to them as community members and taxpayers, as well as to our employees. It would be great for that to be the public piece of education we provide. I do agree that we as a board should support what the superintendent and the other 6 large districts are doing, and doing that in some kind of letter format is important. So it sends a broader message. Ms. Dodge, I have one question. What was the delay? I don't usually see in my years the bills delayed going to the governor like this. Was there a reason? Are they realizing that this isn't going to sell well? Why would they delay sending it to the governor?
Very few bills have gone to the governor so far. Usually by this date, you would have a majority of bills would have been sent to the governor, but because of the pandemic and because of the uncertainty of, we haven't really gotten any numbers as to the impact to Florida's economy because of when those numbers come in. The April 25th economic report only covered 2 weeks in March that were actually impacted by economic activity. And I would say that your May report, which probably came in today, would be the first report the state has gotten that would have a full month's of economic impact to the state from the pandemic. And then the June 25th report is going to be is really what I would imagine our legislature is waiting for, so that they can see the full impact to revenue from the pandemic. And so I would say I'm only aware of maybe 10 bills overall of 250 that passed that have gone to the governor so far. The budget hasn't gone to them. And I would say that nothing that could impact revenue has gone to the governor yet, because they're waiting to see the impact of the pandemic to state.
And they'll know that, and you're saying the final you think will be June 25th, the report that would show the impact of COVID?
That would be the May and the June report are going to be the reports that would have full months of revenue to the state that would in weeks that were impacted by the pandemic.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Courtney?
Yeah, again, I'm sorry, my internet is, I'm back on the last bullet of the CARES Act. Before I even got to this, my internet fell. But did I miss that the last bullet we can use if and when we get that money to stabilize our budget for 2021 staff? Is that what I heard?
It is an allowable use of the funding. And I think the further conversation we had was we would be careful about doing that because this is non-recurring funding. And when you fund a person, that's a recurring cost.
Right. I don't mean to hire extra staff. I mean to keep what we have.
Right.
Okay. And then back to your slide, the number that jumps out to me, and Ms. Dodge, I was up there when we were trying to lobby our representatives, and I know that you tried to lobby for partial payment. Is this the partial payment, the $9 million? And I've also heard that we are overestimating that by a couple of $1 million. I just wanted your response on that. And as I look at the total cost statewide and then the total cost to our school districts, it appears to me yet again they're going to try to balance everything on the backs of public schools, and that is not acceptable. And I will say that out loud. I've spoken to our representatives personally and told them that that is just not acceptable. And I too will be lobbying the governor to veto this. And my last statement is this is a reoccurring cost now, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Thank you. And
thank you. Ms. Cunningham?
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. I just had a thought as I'm hearing everybody discuss this. Give me just a second. due to the timing of all of this, I was wondering if it might make sense. We have a couple different options because I feel that everybody's, from the comments made today regarding House Bill 5007, that most of us would like to send communication regarding vetoing of this bill. In order to do that, we can do a couple different ways. What we've done in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, we have sent out a letter on behalf of the board underneath the chair's signature by a consensus. If the board decided today, as we sit here, that we wanted to do this by consensus, we could draft up a letter with Mr. Bridges' help, asking and following suit with what the superintendents are doing, and Mrs. Byrd has already explained. If not, we could draft something up for your review at our next work session. And vote on it collectively, because this is not a voting meeting today, it's a work session. Or each one of us individually could get with Wes and Susan and perhaps draft up your own letter that goes out on district stationery and send the letters that way. We have done that before. We have done it every which way. I don't know what everybody's comfortable with and what they would prefer, but I understand how important this is and about the amount of the dollars that we're talking here. And since our superintendents have come together and decided that the best thing for us at this point in time would be to veto this bill, I think we should collectively do something, either individually or as a group. And I would be happy to sign a letter on behalf of the board, or we could draft up a letter with signature and each of you could come to the office and sign it in the next few days and we could get that out there. So, Mr. Bridges, am I on the right path here before we start getting questions?
I think you're close. One possibility is that there would be a letter drafted that each board member could sign individually. But that doesn't require any action of the school board. Tell us what you want to have in it. I can work with Ms. Dodge and we can put together a letter similar to what the superintendent sent, and you could send it out individually. If you want to send something out as a board, I would recommend that you direct that it be crafted, then put it on an agenda for a vote.
Okay, I think that's pretty much what I said, either individually or collectively as a board. So let's see, I have a bunch of board members weighing in. Madam Superintendent, do you want to call on them or do you want me to?
We had Ms. Reynolds up next.
My hand was actually up before we started talking about this. I was just going to ask if your letter, if we could see a copy of that, but if also we could share that on social media. As far as us sending a letter, I'm fine to send a letter. I'd like to have Wes draft it. Sure. But I'm indifferent as to whether we send it individually or whether we all sign the same one. I can go either way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Fields.
I think that we need to do a unified letter. I think it's going to be much more impactful than doing individual letters by the board members. And I would agree that we could look at what the superintendent's group might be doing, and then Wes can kind of help fine tune it where it fits for our needs.
Yes, I would have to agree. And I think that we could work together and put a draft together and then email it out to all the board members to make sure everybody is in agreement with the verbiage, obviously prior to sending the letter.
Thank you. We have Ms. Courtney. Okay,
I'm sorry, I took my hand down because Sarah Beth and Ms. Reynolds and Ms. Fields took care of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I see your comment now. Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Well, I agree with Ms. Fields that a collective letter will have a greater impact, but I don't think we can get that done by June 1st. And I think that
I think
far more important is getting something to the state before June 1st. And I think from a practical perspective, and I'll defer to Mr. Bridges, but it seems to me from a practical perspective, having Mr. Bridges draft something, sending it to each of us, having us sign it, we can get in the mail before June 1st, so we get something to the state, individually, showing our support of the superintendent.
And I would just like to weigh in. I think we can get that done here in the next day or so, because the superintendents have already drafted such a letter. I believe we could take that and utilize some of that verbiage plus some of our own. And I feel like within the next day or so, we could have a letter out to you all. And if everybody's in agreement, it goes. So I think we could accomplish it before June 1st.
Well, I think what I heard Mr. Bridges say, that we would have to send it individually. We couldn't send it as a group.
My concern is a sunshine concern. It's an open meeting concern. If the board is going to sign a document as a board, you're going to need to act on it officially. You could do a letter that looks very similar to what the superintendents are sending out. It can be an identical letter on letterhead, but it would be signed by each of you individually, separate letter. I, Lord Cunningham, as board chair and a member of the school board of Polk County, same letter, same letterhead, but each individual member signs it separately. That way you don't run into a sunshine problem with voting.
So otherwise we'll have to, if we do it as collectively, we'll have to have a vote on it. We can't do that before June 1st.
Yeah, that is correct. But I thought we could, because I thought we've done in the past at work sessions, we've came to a consensus that we wanted to do this. And if everybody in a consensus says yes, I believe we can send that out. Am I wrong, Mr. Bridges?
Consensus is one of those things that makes school board attorneys break out in hives. There are times when we talk about consensus in terms of direction we want to go. Okay. But if you're issuing a specific letter, I think that would either require getting a ring. It either requires a vote of the school board, or it can go to each of you and you can each sign it, same letter, same letterhead.
Okay.
Just paper them with it.
Okay. Well, the other option is, if you agree, I could sign the letter on behalf of the board. Does that work?
That requires a board vote also.
It does.
Well,
okay.
I think I could craft a letter in such a way that it says, as the chair of the school board, I would like to express my, and give the litany of the opinion. That way it's clear that she is not speaking for the school board, but she is, I'm the chairman of the school board of Polk County, and I would like to voice my concern, that sort of thing.
So what's the pleasure of the board at this point? And I can't see anybody's faces, so I don't really know. Madam Superintendent, it's back to you.
Okay, we have Mr. Townsend, then Ms. Miller after Mr. Townsend's comment.
Yeah, let me just make a suggestion here. Why don't, it seems to me that perhaps the easiest way to do this is to write a very simple letter that says, 1, please veto the FRS bill as the superintendents have said. 2, please apply by June 1st for the federal Title I money. Boom, boom. That's it. And why don't we just schedule a meeting Thursday for 5 minutes? Staff doesn't even have to come, and we just vote. Like we can just do a Zoom meeting. It would take us 5 minutes, and then it's formal. It's official. I mean, is there anything that would stop us from? I mean, it is an emergency because of the June 1st time. The June 1st date relates to the CARES Act money and applying for it. It doesn't actually relate to the FRS money, but I think we need to be on record with both. And so it would make sense to me to have a very short, like 2-line letter. Thank you very, very much, and we vote for it Thursday in a quick vote. Does that make sense to people?
We could get a special meeting convened for that purpose with that single item on the agenda, get the public notice out, get the agenda out tomorrow electronically, and we'd call it a special meeting. That would be your agenda we could do that.
Yeah. And again, staff doesn't even have to come other than helping set up the the meeting. I mean, this will be 5 minutes. I mean, people would have to have the right to comment on it. You'd have to open the email to them. But other than that, it's going to be done fast.
Well, is there any advantage to doing that, or just leaving it the way we left it? Create the letter and just have everybody individually sign it and send it, so we don't have to repeat it again.
I think when the Polk County School Board takes a unified position, it means a lot more than when individual school board members send letters.
Okay. How does everyone else feel? I can't see hands. So
we still have some questions. I mean, some comments. I see
Mhm.
Ms.
Go ahead.
I would mention that it would be the same letter.
Ms. Miller, I think you've lowered your hand. You said you were in a consensus. Do you have any other comments?
I do. I just want to, I think a unified front from the Polk County School Board is needed in many directions, but if we can do this as a letter, it speaks louder than 7 individual letters. And so I'm not opposed to meeting quickly. I'm not opposed to authorizing whatever level for the board chair to sign off. But I think it needs to be, in my opinion, it should be a letter of unification from a 7th largest district. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Mr. Wilson followed by Ms. Reynolds after Mr. Wilson.
I like the idea of meeting Thursday and voting on it. I have a conflict. I have a meeting already scheduled from 1 to 2, so I couldn't meet during that time frame, but I can meet before or after.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Fields.
Could we send all the individual letters and in a packet together so that they're all arriving at the same time, and then go through and vote on it at our next meeting? I realize that that's after the June 1st deadline. I know Billy said staff don't have to attend, but I think it's pretty difficult to do one of these without staff attending, particularly when we have to have somebody reading the emails and somebody getting us set up to go live and all of those things. That I'm never opposed to meeting, but I also, it takes about an hour for staff to set up for a 5-minute meeting. If we're all already sending the same letter, I would be okay with sending all of us sending it in a packet together from the district, and then just codifying it at the next board meeting that we're doing it unified.
Thank you, Ms. Fields, then followed by Ms. Courtney.
I believe we would have to have someone on staff to take minutes. I believe this would be a meeting. My question is, Mr. Bridges, could we not do a conference call and instead of doing the Zoom and have the same impact?
I'm unmuted. The important thing is that you can have a virtual meeting whether or not there's video. You can do it audio, you can do it video. You do have to have an agenda, and you would have to have minutes. If you're going to vote, you also have to have the opportunity for public comment, but it does not have to be video. It would need to be live streamed so that people could hear the audio during the meeting.
So Ms. Jackie, I guess the question would be for you and your team, which one would be the least time consuming for 5 minutes? Would it be the Zoom or would it be the conference call? Or do you have an answer for that?
So just to go back, the June 1st date was for the CARES Act only, not the FRS. So I don't know if that's weighing into this, because I think we're trying to get something by for the CARES Act, but was the impact for the FRS?
I wanted both. I suggested putting both, that they're both things.
Okay.
So can I weigh in,
yeah.
Madam Superintendent? Okay. So I was going to bring up in my comments that we will need to meet next week. I will be coming to you at the end of this session during my comments to discuss dates to start the superintendent search moving forward. So maybe this would be helpful if June 1 is not the drop dead date. I was looking at having Andrea Messina from the Florida School Boards Association meet with us either next June 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. So if we're already meeting one day next week, if we come to a consensus on a date that everybody could attend, it would be a meeting just like this where we could discuss moving forward. My question is, do you want to put this at the beginning of that, and then we don't have to do it on Thursday and then a day next week? Just throwing that out there since we're discussing it, rather than having to meet on Thursday and then again next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Would that work for everybody? We could draft the letter in the time and then have it prepared. Everybody would have a chance to review it, and then we could perhaps vote on it at the very first part of the meeting next week.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Because I
Yes.
know June 1st was your date. Back to Mr. Bridges. You said they can vote by phone. You can do it they could do it by phone?
We could do a virtual meeting by telephone.
Yeah.
I think it would probably be just as easy to do it by Zoom, which is designed for it.
I think the team could have it either way. If you want to do it by
People
phone,
can do
it's
it
fine.
using their cell phone if they need to.
We just have to be prepared if we're going to be voting on it to be able to have public input. That's the other piece. So somebody has to be here ready to accept public calls and public comments during the time. So that's why I kind of feel like a Zoom meeting and in a meeting like we're doing now would allow for that prior to that vote.
Okay, my recommendation would be to use the Zoom meeting, give just as much public access as you can.
And if we did meet next week, which like I said, I was going to talk to everybody about, superintendent is available those dates, Ms. Messina is. If we pick that, we're still within the 7-day notice to be able to let folks know that we would be meeting in a work session environment and then having the one vote. What's the pleasure of the board?
I have a comment, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
So I agree with my colleagues on the board that a collective letter is far more, has far more impact, but more important than that is doing it in a timely manner. If we don't get it done by June 1st, I think we.
Okay.
So it's a timing issue. I'm all for waiting for next week, except that we really missed our opportunity to speak if we don't do it by June 1st.
Right.
Madam Chair, if the board wants to get the letter to them and want to have it by Thursday, June 1st, and that's what I'm hearing,
Yes.
Staff can have that. It's going to be a quick meeting for them, but they can leave it set up here so you all can do that. Staff will be ready.
Okay, so when are we when is the date that we want to meet? Tomorrow or Thursday?
I was suggesting Thursday, May 28th. Like that's in 2 days. Again, this is not a complicated letter. It's please veto the FRS bill. Please apply for the federal money. Done. You know, we don't need to go into any as much as I appreciate Wes's writing, we don't need that much of it.
Right. Short and sweet.
Yeah, I mean, if that's okay. I mean, for me, I had asked to have this on the agenda so we could vote on it today. So it is a question of timeliness for me. I would much prefer if we're going to do it
ahead of time. Okay. Yeah. All right. So everybody's on the same page then? Everybody feel comfortable with meeting on Thursday? The question is, what time?
Madam Chair, you have some hands that are raised. Ms. Courtney has her hand raised.
Go ahead.
I was just going to echo what my colleagues have said, and it doesn't need to be all convoluted and talk about it for an hour. Wes said we can do it this way. I would suggest we do it this way and still reach out individually. But I think it does send a message to the public that we are fighting for, every dollar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, you have Ms. Fields.
I would say that we do it on Thursday, maybe at 1. I don't know, Mr. Wilson said something about maybe a conflict. I don't remember the dates, but I don't think that we need to have the discussion on the superintendent search tied into the FRS. We need to just go on and take care of it.
Thank you.
Yes, just to be clear, I'll be talking about that later. That will have nothing to do with this. It's a separate meeting. Yes, ma'am. So 1 o'clock then, is that what I'm hearing on the 28th? Staff, is everybody good with that?
I don't think Len can do that day. Can do that time.
I'll
That's
have
like his
a
window.
meeting from 1 to 2. I can meet any other time that day.
But it would
I'm
only
good in
be
the
a
morning.
5-minute meeting, right? From 1 to 1:15 at the most, just to vote on the letter and we're done.
Well,
It's not going to be.
It's fine. If everyone else wants to vote on it and I'm not there, that's okay, but I can't be there.
Oh, you can't be there at 1.
I can't be there at 1, correct.
Okay, so tell us a time you could work.
Any other time. I could do it at 12:30 or at 2, probably 2:15.
How about 12:30? Does that work for everyone? Yes, everybody hands, thumbs up.
Yep.
We all good?
Works for Sarah.
Okay, so let's plan it for 12:30 then on this Thursday, May the 28th. And Mr. Bridges and staff, if you would get together and put the letter together.
We'll have the letter ready tomorrow.
Yes.
As soon as we finish here, I'll arrange for public notice to be posted
Perfect.
electronically.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Madam Superintendent, back to you.
Thank you. Were there any other questions? I think we're good on this item. Okay, we have one more item, and Ms. Townley, if you can put the PowerPoint back up. I think we are done, Ms. Dodge, on the FRS. And I know we have Mr. Perrone coming with some budget updates. You just have to unmute. Mr. Perrone, I believe they muted you back. Can you unmute?
I got it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry about that. So the first thing I want to do is answer the question Mrs. Miller proposed regarding what has been the cost savings since the either virtual setting or pandemic. If you recall, at the last meeting, I increased the fund balance projection end of year from 4% to 5%. That represents about $8 million. And so that's what we're estimating the savings to be. That is everything, not just contracted services. The major part of that savings is Kelly subs. We should save roughly $3 million. And then the shutting down transportation is about 1.6 million. In other contracts is about 300,000. So that 5 million of that right off the top is from those 3 items. So I just wanted to mention that is what we're projecting the savings to be. That being said, I know there was a lot of talk about the CARES Act, but one of the most important things that Mrs. Dodge said is that the budget hasn't even gone to the governor, or he has it and hasn't signed it. So my big concern is that we're going to get the 34 million. I'm pretty sure they will apply for that and get it. But they're going to offset whatever they have given us to date in the budget. So I am concerned that while we will bring you all kinds of different ideas on that money, it may be just plugging what we lose when this final budget is solidified. Unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I can't see the budget we have right now sticking, and everything that they've talked about, the $40 on the base student allocation, that may all come off the table and be used and be supplemented by this CARES Act, just like they did in 07, 08.
Okay, Mr. Perrone just wanted to bring that quick update that he's been on his calls during this time as well. So are there any questions for him? Ms. Miller.
Thanks, Mr. Perrin, for that information. Real quick, the other 3 million plus, other than Kelly subs and transportation and contracts, if you have an idea right now of where that has gone or where we save from there. And can we add this to, so it's in writing, so the public understands, can we add this to the letter as far as what our budget's going to look like, and replacing funds instead of providing what we discussed earlier in the legislative session? I know you probably don't have an opinion on that, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what the final budget's going to be. This is a lot of conjecture on my part. I've been through this before. So I don't know what the final budget's going to be. I just can't see when they set this budget, and added the 47.5 for the beginning teachers, and the $40 on the base. The pandemic wasn't even in play at that time. So I can't see, and as Wendy said, the fact that the budget is sitting there with the governor waiting on May 15th and June 15th financials from the state, there's a reason for that, and it's, I believe, pretty bad. And so I think we are going to get hit with that, and then we're going to get this CARES Act, and then we're going to have to juggle the money around, and that's what we're going to have to bring to you. The other thing I'm concerned about is that signing of the budget, or the vetoing of these bills, may not happen till after your June board meeting. So the next time you see a budget is when you're going to vote the tentative in July, which is going to be extremely troublesome. Not just for the fact of the timing, but it's you're going to have to make decisions immediately at that time. So we're going to have to give you as many scenarios as we can when we sit down in July. And I'm afraid that meeting that's normally fairly brief is going to be a longer meeting than usual.
Thank you. I appreciate you up front allowing for that scheduling, because it's going to be, that time frame is worrisome. Did you have any other numbers for that 8 million, the other 3 million of what we saved?
No, I'll give you a much better and clearer picture in our June meeting on what the actual savings are, because we'll start closing out. We close out obviously June 30th. There are a number of things that are going on that we're saving, but we're also spending. So it's kind of weighing both. So we've had savings, but for example, we spent 100,000 on the MiFi and the internet service for teachers and students that don't have that during this time. And we paid for that out of general. That was not an expense we would ever pay for, but that's an up in cost, not a savings. But overall, we're estimating the total to be 8. I'll give you more exact figures in June.
And we'll have more expenses, I'm assuming, in tech, from things that we have to replace or repair. So I appreciate that, and I'll look forward to that in June. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Courtney?
Sarah here. I appreciate that, Mr. Perone, and I know that you're looking at every dime, but I just want to reiterate that this is why we must stand together so they do not balance the deficit, because we know there's going to be one on the backs of our public schools again. We have not even climbed out of the hole that they created in 2008. And I just cannot be more adamant that we have to stand together and fight for public education. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, I just something Mike said about the timing of when we're getting things. I mean, I think you've seen today the importance of having a cadence, or at least being flexible in when we actually have meetings. I think it probably makes a lot of sense for us to plan to have like a snap work session as soon as the state finally comes clean on what it's going to do. Rather than have us be voting on some up thing, let's just all plan as a group when the state says this is what we're seeing and what you're going to get, and this is what the budget is, that we, like, the next day or the day after, get together to talk about what it means, so we're not like trying to make very hard votes just totally on the fly. Does that make sense to people?
Okay, and soon as Mike and his team, they get the budget and scrub it enough, we will get with the chair at that time. And because we know at one, it's going to be time sensitive anyway of what we're dealing with. So we'll get with the chair and then schedule a meeting so that we can move quickly as we can to do what we need to do. If we have to adjust or if there's going to be something where there is going to be reductions. Again, we're holding vacancies as tight as we can to hopefully help offset. Don't know if it's going to offset a lot, but we're being very cognizant about our spending right now as well.
Well, but I mean, even in terms of the actual economics and organizational structure of things, once we know what the damage is going to be, it's important for the board to have a pretty unified message in communicating that to the public. It's and to our folks as well. And I think having a work session as quickly as we can once we have a picture will be helpful. So I would just hope that just think we should do that and appreciate you being willing to do it. So
yeah, and I think Mike will be willing because he's already indicated it won't be a short one. It will be a longer meeting.
Okay.
So, okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none on this topic, I'm going to turn it back over to the chair, Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Board members, I just have a few things, and then certainly we'll entertain time for everyone for comments. Let me first publicly announce then, after our discussion today, we will be having a special school board meeting Thursday, May the 28th via Zoom at 12:30 in the afternoon. Secondly, I do want to announce that our next work session and board meeting beyond that is the regularly scheduled one in June, the 16th. And due to the changes in graduation, we had originally talked about moving it from 12:30 to 1 because graduations were going to be in the morning. And now that graduations are in the evening, superintendent has requested that we have our board meeting at 9. Our work session at 9 and our board meeting at 1 o'clock. Do I have a consensus to move everything early because the graduations now are in the afternoon that day, and they've worked so hard to get the stadium and get everything figured out. I thought that was reasonable that we could move our part in the morning. Comments, Ms. Miller? I can't hear you.
Do you think the school board meeting should be moved up? We always run over, and one of my high schools is graduating at 4 o'clock that day, and I'm not sure how staff will go. And I know we're still going to be virtual, so luckily it's in my district, so it's not far for me. But I don't know that staff, unless they're going to leave those meetings early, will be able to make a 4 o'clock graduation.
Thank you, Ms. Miller, for understanding that. And I did speak to the chair because the staff that's here is actually doing a live stream for the graduation as well. So what we're trying to do is move the graduation. We're taking work session from 9 to 12:30. If we finish early, that'd be great. And then we're going to start the board meeting at 1. Hopefully staff can get out of here, hopefully by 3 or 2:30 so that they can start. And if not, we may have to leave some of the staff behind, but send a majority on so that they can start live streaming for a 4 o'clock graduation.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do we have a consensus then to be able to move forward with that? At best, we could move it 9 to 12, take a half an hour and start the board meeting at 12:30. That is another option, maybe give an extra 30-minute cushion. What's the pleasure of the board?
I agree, Ms. Cunningham.
I think that would be a good option. Would we have to note? We'd have to change it in the notice.
Yes, ma'am.
Do that anyway.
Yeah, right. We're going to have to change. Yeah. Okay, Ms. Reynolds?
I was just going to say, we can always, if we notice it for 12:30 and aren't able to start until 1, we can always start later, but we can't start
earlier.
The notice. Right. So I'd rather us notice it earlier if possible.
All right. Anyone else? So do we have consensus then that we'll have that meeting on June 16th, work session at 9, and then board meeting starting at 12:30.
Yes.
That's consensus. Everybody do something. Put your hand up, do something. Everybody good?
Courtney says yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, and then the next item, as we all know, we are deeply saddened, but excited for our superintendent as she begins a new season of her life. And keeping that in mind, we have to move forward slowly but surely through all of this with a superintendent search. So I contacted Andrea Messina with the Florida School Boards Association regarding the process of beginning that that whole process, essentially. So I thought it would be imprudent for us to have another Zoom meeting like this, either June 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I know that is next week and it's not a whole lot of time, but based on the pleasure of the board, for us to meet, she would join us on a Zoom call and pretty much outline the steps and processes that we will need to take to move forward with this. In addition, once she outlines the kind of the process, then we can start to talk a little bit about it. Yeah, I know y'all are going to have questions. I reviewed my notes this weekend regarding what we did back in 2013, and I kind of have a clear vision, certainly, but we need input from y'all as we go forward, namely a timeline and so forth. And then the other big question, she is going to discuss with us the process, but certainly it is up to us as a board to determine who we want to lead that superintendent search. We have always contracted with an outside agency that does this. And the last time we did it, it happened to be with the FSBA. So she said, I will be happy to come to speak to your board, but it in no way reflects that I'm trying to get that business. So I want everybody to understand that that is a service that they do provide to folks like us who are going through a superintendent search, but in no way are we required to use their services simply because she helped us with the process. So what I would like to ask is if we could do that. It's up to the pleasure here of you all. But I'm looking at, she's available the 2nd of June, the 3rd, and the 4th. I got with superintendent, and while she's not really a part of this process, I do want to keep her involved. I think it's important that she remain part of this alongside of us. And then I've also was very grateful that superintendent was willing to stay in the Polk County School District until close to the end of February. Because in my mind, the typical timeline, having reviewed all my notes, this is like the 3rd or 4th time we're doing this. It's wonderful to have some overlap and transition between superintendents. So I'm hoping the goal is, and I talked with Ms. Messina, that we would be starting this process and hopefully be able to offer someone the position towards the, that between Thanksgiving and Christmas, if you will, and then have the person perhaps start by the first part of January. And then there would be at least 2 months, if not more, of an overlap between the two. And Superintendent Byrd has been so gracious and so wonderful as we've talked about this, because it's difficult. It's difficult for all of us. None of us want to lose her, but we respect where she's at in her point in her life. So all of that being said, I'd love to get the process kind of started. We're here in June already next week, and it does take about a good 6 months to do the process and to do it properly, to have not only our input, and you'll see they're very, very professional, no matter which company you choose. We talk about everything from the characteristics and traits we want to questions, timelines, community input. We had lots of community forums. I hope that we could achieve all of that in doing this, because I think it's so very important. So with your blessing, does anybody have a date that they prefer? I see a hand. Miss Miller?
Just was going to ask maybe for your history. I know that FSBA was used in the past, and before that, I think the same company was used 2 times.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way to get for newer board members the history of who was used, or what we've done in the past, maybe from Wes or someone who
Sure.
was a part of the process?
Sure.
And not that, you know, FSBA may be fine, but I just wanted to make sure that we are looking at every avenue, because I
Sure.
remember 10 years ago, a lot of money was spent privately trying to help.
Yes.
And we struggled then.
I know.
So I would like to see, the companies we've used in the past, and if
Sure.
there's any new ones, to send them along for us to review.
And I do believe when Miss Messina comes, Zoom wise, if you will, that she will present those. They're very good about giving us a list of who the current ones are, I think, that are being used in the state. I do remember that from before, but I can ask Miss Warbington to look through the files. We have everything here. Pat McManus was an incredible individual who was very organized, and I'm sure we can look all that up and between all of us, let you know who the different companies were. I did look up the cost that we spent in 2013 and total, not us, but the total cost. And I have a breakdown of all of that. If any of you want to see that, I will get that to you so you have some idea what we paid, what others were able to contribute in the community and help with. So, but I'll be happy to get that to each of you if that's something that you want through Miss Warbington.
Yes, thank you. If you could send that.
Yes, ma'am.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. Ms. Fields?
Yes, Ms. Cunningham, I was going to say, I think that your approach is a very good one, so that we can all be on the same page. And I'm happy that Ms. Messina knows that just because we're going to have them to come, have her to do a presentation, does not mean that we're going to hire them for the search. And I think for me, the best day next week is going to be Thursday. I think you wanted to know that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Tuesday and Wednesday is not going to be good for my schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fields. Mrs. Reynolds?
I'm with Miss Courtney. She just put in the chats, I just want to keep her, period. And I agree completely. I would love to be able to keep her, but I'm available any day next week to discuss. So whatever is best for the majority.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Ms. Fortney?
Yeah. The second and third works for me the best, but if it is the fourth, the afternoon would work better for me. And that's really all I'm going to say right now because I have too many words. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fortney. Mr. Wilson?
I'm available the second or the fourth. I'm not available the third. So,
okay, sir. So noted.
Sounds like the fourth is a popular day.
It looks like that. Yes, sir. Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, the fourth is best for me, but I could do the other two if I had to. A couple of things, and one, I just want this clarified on the record. I wanted to ask Superintendent, because there's been some talk about this. Is there any chance that the outcome of the elections would change this decision? Because if there is, you know, that's something we need to know, and it might affect how the search goes and whether we do one. So I just wanted to confirm with her that it would or would not. I can't see your face, so I know. I mean,
well, I really don't know that that's appropriate here. All we're trying to do is set a date and time to talk about the search. I think that's a personal question that you ask her, because yourself, myself, and Sarah Beth are the ones up for re-election.
right.
So I don't know what you're implying.
Well, I'm not implying anything. What I am saying is that if the outcome of the elections is going to have some effect, potentially, then it has an effect on candidates. And there's already talk about this, you know. And so I just wanted to try to be clear. I don't want internal candidates to come forward or external candidates to come forward and then the elections go a certain way, and then everybody's in a weird place. So I'm just trying to avoid that happening. Yeah, it would be it would be good to get that on the record. Secondly, you know, superintendent, you know, cited some things about quote unquote some board members. I think it would be helpful, and you should have to do it here, but in perhaps could write this out for the search. You know, what some specific examples of what she was talking about, because people are going to be interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them. You know, and what the superintendent's perception of oversight may be different than some applicants might be, and it would be helpful for her to articulate some of what she was talking about in that paragraph to us, because, you know, I don't know if she was talking about me or Mrs. Fields or Lynn Wilson or Sarah or Beth or who. I mean, it was kind of non-specific, and I think specificity is always good. So if she's willing to sort of lay out some examples of what she's talking about, I think that would be really helpful to the search. But mostly I'm just trying to get a clarification as to whether this is a decision that she's solid on, you know, and that it won't be affected by how the elections go.
Okay,
for the sake of the search.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Townsend. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Notwithstanding Mr. Townsend's concerns, because they could be quite valid, we have responsibility to conduct this in a professional manner, and that means we just need to move forward. And those issues may be of concern later, but we have a responsibility to start the process and move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Okay, so can I have a show of hands then? Are we good for June the 4th? And someone said later in the afternoon. So would June the 4th at 1 p.m. work for everybody? Can I have a show of hands with a thumbs up if you're good? June 4th at 1 p.m. And Superintendent, you're good, and staff, correct? Because it'll be just like this. Ms. Fortney?
Yeah. Actually, I just double checked my calendar, and it's the afternoon that I have a doctor's appointment. I am so sorry. It's at 12:30, and I already canceled it once because of COVID. Anyway, we can move it to the morning of the 4th. I am so sorry.
Yes. Were you the one that wanted it in the afternoon, or was that Mr. Wilson?
It was me.
Okay. Okay. All righty. So let's do on the 4th, would 11 a.m. be okay? 10, 11?
10.
Okay. So we will be meeting, Mr. Bridges, if you would be so kind to create a notice, a public notice about our meeting, which was scheduled now for a special school board work session. Actually, this is not a meeting, a special work session, regular work session for June the 4th at 10 a.m. If everybody is good with that, let's see a show of hands. Everybody good? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. And for that meeting, it's just going to be a work session, and we will have Miss Messina Zoom in. And I think she might be sending us some information. I'm not sure. I'm working with her. She's been texting me, but it's kind of hard to do that while we're in this meeting. So if there's anything that I receive ahead of time, I will forward that to you. If not, we will be looking at it, basically setting a timeline. She'll be discussing the process. And then at that point, we as a board can discuss how we want to move forward and what our timeline looks like as well. Any questions on that? So we'll be meeting this Thursday for an actual board meeting for a vote, and then next Thursday, June the 4th, to discuss our superintendent search. And in the meantime, Ms. Miller asked for some history, and we'll try to put that together for you before that meeting next week. So everybody has that in hand. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then if we'd like, we're welcome to go through our normal board members report. Mr. Townsend, if you'd like to start.
I don't have anything. I'm done.
All right. Ms. Courtney?
Hi. Yes. I put a question up there. I was just, and I'm sure Superintendent Byrd probably answered it, but I was trying to scroll to find out if the summer school application forms have been sent to our staff yet. Somebody wanted me to ask that because apparently they either missed the email or it's not been sent yet, and I want to give the right information. I also have a question for future discussion, possibly, or answers from Superintendent Byrd. Is there a multifunctional task force by the district to plan for next year? And if, I'm sure there is, but if there is, who is on it and when do they meet? I have would like to know that. And I sent her some questions earlier in the day, but I just want for the public, mainly, I have had numerous people from food service. I brought this up the last board meeting, I believe, to secretaries, to teachers, etc., custodians, that people are not taking COVID seriously. The guidelines are not being followed in not just our schools, but our district offices. No masks are being worn. Definitely not social distancing. 10 people gathered together. And I know people are imperfect. I get that. But some people are just plain scared. And they don't really have the underlying health conditions that could be taken by a doctor. And I'm just wondering if we can do it for graduation, you know, why not do it for ourselves? And again, I'm going to go back to the best teacher is somebody who models. And then my last statement is about a survey relating to the pros and cons of the distance learning and how that's going to be done and when and how it will be distributed. And I want to thank again our frontline workers, our teachers, our custodians, everybody involved. I just can't be more proud to say that pre-K through 12 public schools just do it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Courtney. Ms. Reynolds?
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I just wanted to give a huge shout out to all of our schools that are doing parades and senior celebrations and virtual fifth grade graduations, because it really has, they've gone above and beyond to try and make those special moments special still, even though we can't be together. I spent most of Friday at Winter Haven High School with, I think, every one of their teachers, custodians, staff, all social distancing, but they had a huge drive-through throughout the whole campus with Winter Haven Fire Department holding a huge banner over the school to say "Go Big Blue, Unconquered 2020." And the kids got to drive through and talk to their teachers through the car windows, which we had so many, particularly underclassmen teachers, come up afterwards and say, you know, I don't normally get to say goodbye to these kids because I don't have them every day anymore, that they really loved it and have asked if they can do it moving forward, even when we're not social distancing, so that they have an opportunity to get to say goodbye to their kids. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all of the schools that are continuing to go above and beyond to make sure those last few days are special.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Ms. Fields?
I don't have anything, Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any comments, but I do have a question for Superintendent Byrd. Do we have a sense yet around the state? I mean, I know we're waiting for the governor, but do we have a sense of what folks are thinking in terms of whether or not we might see full classes in the fall, or if we'll be doing things online?
No, we haven't been given any direction yet, Mr. Wilson, at all. I do just received another conference call I have later in the week So we may be getting more guidance right now. I can tell you that the team and I, going back to one of Ms. Fortney's questions, we've already been looking at drafting a team of community leaders, including our health department. When we're talking about reopening, we've been drafting some plans, whether it's a normal look, whether it's a phase-in look, and whether it's a hybrid. We just have no idea, but we're not going to wait for any guidance. We were starting to draft our plans already. So hopefully by the end of the week, if I hear any more information, I will make sure to send it out to the full board.
So we're pretty much preparing for any possibility.
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And Ms. Miller?
Just had a couple of things. And when I joined the meeting at the beginning, I in the office, and this is the third computer I've gotten to, so this one worked, but I'm not sure if this was covered. I do want to mention the survey of staff and the community. I know I talked to some people in Broward County, and that was very effective for them. It generated a lot of good data on what virtual learning looked like throughout their district with their staff and their students. I would like to see something like that. As far as the reopening, that's the biggest question I get from staff and the community. And so I would like to be able to give them something, even if it's those phases, all of them. And this is what it would look like under phase 1 and phase 2 or phase 3. I had mentioned in the past, some of the universities have put that out already. So there's templates available to create something like that. I think giving more information sooner is better than whatever waiting. And I appreciate we're not going to wait for direction because that's usually very last minute. The other thing is these meetings are very valuable. I've always been a proponent of meeting more often. Our staff is paid well, and I think they appreciate getting the information out. And I know that something as simple as that letter from the 7 districts, I would have liked to have known about that. We could have gotten on it a lot sooner. So I think that we should continue meeting. It's the banter of what it is and what we call it. None of that matters. We need to decide at our next work session what it'll look like, and we continue to meet, especially as we move into a superintendent search, which I think everyone is taking very seriously. The money spent and the moving forward right now is because we are moving forward. Like Mr. Wilson said, we have to look at the outcome and making progress. And so I look forward to being open to meeting however is needed and making sure we get that information out to the public. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. And I've pretty much given my updates already today. So I just want to thank the board for being willing to meet. And I really appreciate all of us working together. It's going to be quite the undertaking as we move forward. But I'm confident that we as a board are going to work together. We're going to work together patiently and look forward to working on this process, being professional with one another, and continuing because we have to secure and hire a new superintendent. And my goal is hopefully before the end of the year, if not sooner. So I appreciate your support. I know there's tons of questions. Please hold all those as we move forward to our next meeting. And I do see a hand up. Mr. Townsend?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to reiterate what Sarah Fortney said, because I have heard a lot of accounts of that as well, of folks not taking the precautions and not modeling the type of behavior that we need modeled. If we're gonna open schools again successfully, there's gonna have to be sort of leadership and accountability around it. So I just wanted to make it clear I've been hearing those concerns as well. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Ms. Reynolds? Can't hear you. You need to unmute.
Sorry, I thought I
That's
clicked.
okay.
I just wanted to highlight what Ms. Bird just said in the chat, that they've been preparing a survey to go out. I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit, Ms. Bird.
Thank you. I was trying to type quickly before the chair adjourned the meeting. But back to Ms. Miller. Yes, we have been working on the survey, Mrs. Miller, to go out to kind of get the feel from our parents. What do they think about school reopening? You know, brick and mortar, distance learning. How do they feel about distance learning? We're preparing for that. We didn't send it out last week because we also had the survey going out with kids in graduation. So you don't want to put out too many surveys at one time. So my goal was to hopefully get this out this week, the latter part of this week, so we can really start continuing to work. And then we'll share with you what we've been working on putting together as a team. Again, we're looking at trying to bring in the healthcare professionals and different things when we're looking at reopening as well. So as soon as we get that, we'll send it to you all so you can see it as well. But I can tell you, we're going to have it to where the parents can fill out something, the community and the students. So we're doing drop down so they can give us some feedback.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Anyone else? Any comments? Okay, seeing none, I would like to go ahead and adjourn our work session today. And I look forward to seeing everybody on this coming Thursday, May the 28th. So, and we're looking forward to getting the letter to everyone so that everybody has a chance to review it. Please check your emails tomorrow to be sure that we're ready to conduct business on Thursday morning. If that's all, then I would like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, and y'all have a wonderful day.